Welcome back for another edition of Sports and Spiritual Things. I'm Dr. Patton. Glad to see you in the building. Come on in, like, share, subscribe. I'm just glad that you stopped by this space. This is a podcast that looks to merge the gospel with sports, and you'll hear some of those things that are, of course, now I got an opinion. If you've been listening to the episodes, trust me, I'm an opinionated man. We've gotten a lot of great guests and still got some on deck. So look, make sure you like, share, and follow. I know there's so many podcasts to choose from, a lot of different things to hear when it comes to content, but do yourself a favor and follow this podcast, because I think that as God continues to bless us to continue to create this, that more ears can get to hear not only about the gospel and hear sports from a different level, but have some fun with it, be creative, and be a positive light in these digital streets. Well, this episode is going to be interesting, if I may say so myself, because we're right after the Super Bowl. Hey, if you saw the He's Pretty Good podcast, or at least that episode, trust me, a lot of things that I said actually happened over this past weekend. When you really kind of break it down, I think Brock played a great game. And the Super Bowl always is a very, it's a high pressure game. That's why everybody don't get there. That's why everybody don't win them. So Brock Purdy played well. 49ers played well enough to win. You know, they lost to a better team. They lost to probably one of the most complete quarterbacks in the game in Patrick Mahomes. And shout out to him and the Chiefs. And, you know, this been their fourth Super Bowl in their history. Look, they're climbing on up the ranks now. I think that the cap has been 6. I believe that the Steelers have 6 and the Patriots have 6, and I think the Cowboys are at 5, and now the Chiefs are at 4. And I think Green Bay may be at about 3 or 4 too. So you know that Super Bowl is definitely elusive, and I don't know why we make it seem as though in the sports stratosphere that winning, in particular in the NFL or any of those 4 professional leagues, including college, basketball, football, baseball, underwater basket weaving, winning championships is not easy. And we've made it so common because we've seen so many great people do it. So, Dr. Patton, what is this to push or not to push is the question. Now, I know you've heard it. I don't know who even said this quote, but I thought about it, you know, on the way to work today, just kind of really moving around. And I was like, you know, man, this whole Travis Kelce thing is really getting legs, and a lot of people are discussing it. And I said, to push or not to quit push is the question. I don't know where the thespian or who it was that came up with to be and not to be is the question. You know, I got my Kappa red on tonight. You know, shout out to the brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi. Y'all saw us. I know y'all saw us tear down the whole Super Bowl halftime show, but I digress. We won't do that because this ain't about that. But just want to kind of slide that in. You know, if just in case you're saying, Dr. Pat, you look a little bit extra dapper, a little Kappa-ish today. Well, forgive me. I'm just in celebration because I'm so proud to be a member of such an illustrious and elite group, but I digress again. So, but when I hear the commentary and I'm looking at all the arguments of what happened in the game, I couldn't help but notice some chatter and even a tweet that came about by one A.J. Brown, former Tennessee Titan, now of the Philadelphia Eagles, helped them to a Super Bowl last year. They played a great game. They lost 38-35 to the same quarterback that Purdy lost to in Patrick Mahomes. And during the game, I think it happened somewhere in the first half, somewhere, first or second quarter. It escapes me when it exactly happened. But it did stand out from a space of Travis Kelce is a very, very passionate guy. Like most great players, like most great athletes. And Andy Reid probably wasn't calling his best offensive game at the time. I can admit that. I can see where he got frustrated with some conservative calls and certain different things that he thought should have happened and him being on the field, you know. But what I found interesting is the commentary after the game and even during the game, because I think the commentators really made it they painted it a certain way. They asserted it to passion. Now, this is the part where I can split the hair because that's what I do. I'm Dr. Patton. I can see both sides. My calling and a part of my training is to be able to see multiple angles and see right and wrong, or two answers actually being true at the same time. Was Travis Kelce wrong? Probably. Should he be suspended the next year? Probably not. Why do you say that, Dr. Pat? Now, let's bring A.J. Brown in, because A.J. Brown, from his perspective, can I tell you, he's actually right. Okay? Two things can be right at the same time. It just depends on what time it's right and, unfortunately, who's doing it. I think that's where A.J. Brown is coming from. And many fans, mainly of the African-American persuasion, that's what they see. But I want to help my people. Can I help my people real quick? I know we're in the thick of Black History Month, or depending on when you're catching this, that's where we are right now. And trust me, this man that you're listening to, this brother that you're listening to right now, I'm very much well aware of hypocrisy. I'm very much well aware of the history of America. Nobody has to convince me of the double standards that they exist amongst how we not only look at players and their performance, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of their play. You know, there's certain guys that get a pass, certain guys that don't. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Now, that's not to let Kelce off the hook. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from for a second. I'm not even telling you that A.J. Brown is wrong. I'm not telling you that you're wrong for whatever you tweeted and how you felt. But here's why I want to help you. Because with Andy Reid, and I saw somebody put this on an ESPN, I guess, article as fans was arguing about it. They said, well, Andy Reid in the press conference had already did damage control. I'm like, pump your brakes. Because understand this. There's a lot of players like LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, those kind of guys that have played for him, that they had their issues and challenges with Coach Reid, but it never boiled over to that. And obviously, to me, Coach Reid wasn't offended. I think that if it was a problem with Big Red, trust me, this is a man that has no problem with letting you know how he feels. Case in point, can we do a trip down sports memory lane for a second? Can we get in our 85 DeLorean and go back to the future for just a minute? And can I remind you of something? Do you remember when Terrell Owens played for him in Philadelphia? That guy. You know, that guy that seems like everywhere he goes, maybe he don't really tear up the locker room, wink, wink, or quotations, but it's always seemed like in his career, there was always some smoke. Now, I heard him when he was making his bid and his rounds for the Hall of Fame, some stuff that he said that brought a lot of different things to mind and clarity. I went in the locker room. All I can do is take his word for it. But on the outside looking in as a journalist and as a fan, I don't know. It looked different. Now, why are you bringing that up? It's important to note this, that Andy Reid had to manage a passionate Terrell Owens. I'm not saying that Terrell Owens ever bumped him, but Terrell Owens got so disruptive that he was asked to stay home. And remember that that infamous camera coming to his home, and he's working out, and he's basically just showing out for the cameras. Same thing he did before he went to the Hall of Fame. Didn't show up, but wanted to get in. He got in, of course, because, I mean, they couldn't deny him just based on his production and who he was as a player. I think the guy can still play. I mean, even when he was trying to get back in the league, he was a guy that I thought that was worth a look, just how much greater shape he's always been in. I think Terrell Owens is just one of those freak athletes that, had he not had a reputation like Rice, he probably could have played an extra 2 or 3 years outside of his perceived prime. But with that being said, how Andy Reid handled that and handled tough situations in the locker room with Brian Dawkins and everybody taking McNabb's side and everybody taking T.O.'s side. You know, Andy had to handle that. So my question is, where was the smoke then? For those that want to put Andy Reid in the space to where it's, oh, he's just taking up for Kelce because that's one of his quote unquote white players. No. Andy Reid is a player's coach. He has his moments of discipline. Shady McCoy said so, and others that's played for him, that's been a part of his regime and make that with the Eagles and now with Kansas City. He's been more successful in Kansas City because that's just keeping a buck. I think that while the Eagles have been contenders and they've gotten the Super Bowl, there's been certain things about the organization that's not always so player and even coach friendly. I mean, Doug Peterson won him a Super Bowl and the guy's fired. He's in Jacksonville now. Sirianni is now on the hot seat in certain areas. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that if you look at what this man has built in 2 franchises, and no, he didn't get them a Super Bowl, but he went to 5 NFC championship games with very little talent and with a very good quarterback in Donovan McNabb, maybe not great, but a good quarterback that was good enough to be a Pro Bowl guy and play with some really sketchy receivers until he got T.O. that pushed him over the hump. So imagine if Donovan McNabb had that and what Andy Reid obliging Donovan to go get him, and then it happens only for this guy in a year's time after the Super Bowl and getting his money to act like that. Andy Reid had to manage that, and we're sitting here arguing about a bump that he wasn't offended by. You know, one of those things to whereas let's use scripture here because, you know, that's what we do on the show, you know, sports and spiritual things. Let me give you an example. The Bible says in Matthew 8, make that 18 and 15, somewhere in there, it says that if you have an ought with your brother, go to him and him alone, right? So really, honestly, if Andy Reid, I can only give him the benefit of the doubt. If he's not upset about it, and maybe how do we know that he and Travis didn't clear the air? Or if this hadn't happened in practice when you didn't see it? Or if it was a situation to whereas they cleared the air how they cleared it, Andy went to him or Travis went to him and apologized, and that was that heat of the moment with Super Bowl champs. This is not a Antonio Brown scenario where he takes his jersey off and he doesn't want to go back in the game. And then the coach says, look, man, you got negative energy on the sidelines. We don't need that. We're trying to win football games, right? Or, you know, let's case in point, you know, other negative scenarios. Like I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. I remember when Vince Young, and I don't think it was a negative thing with him per se, but the perception was taken when he, not only when he didn't want to go back in the game, but another time he tried to go back in the game, and then Fisher doesn't let him go in, and then Vince Young basically is at the end of his rope because he's frustrated. Now, hindsight's 2020, because when you look at what Jeff Fisher did with one young Jared Goff as the number 1 pick, and then the guy looks like he couldn't coach his or quarterback his way out of a paper bag, then they finally get rid of him. McVay comes in, guy looks like a whole different quarterback. So from that perspective, a lot of the times when we look at players, their frustrations, their passions, and then certain players, you know, we got video of Peyton Manning going off on Jeff Saturday and having issues with Tom Moore, or the shouting match between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick on the sideline. Was it discussed? Yeah. But was it discussed the way we're discussing this? Of course not. And there's a segment of the population, and to AJ Brown's credit, I get it, because there is thin ice when it comes to perception for African Americans in this country, not just in sports. I get it. I mean, I look, you see what uniform I play with. I get it. But here's what I'm also going to get and have to be fair about. That if Andy is not offended, why are you? Did Kelce bump you? Or is there's a scenario that I just mentioned with such bonehead? I mean, let's go all the way back to the 90s with this is an NBA discussion, but or at least example, a part of the discussion. Remember when Latrell Sprewell choked his coach, PJ Carlesimo, back in the 90s? And people tried to defend that? Where was the defense? I'm not saying that PJ Carlesimo wasn't getting a little disrespectful with the language. I'm not saying that. But talk is talk. And I'm not necessarily blaming Spree. I mean, who knows what Spree was going through, in particular with some of the stuff that Latrell had to deal with his family at the time. You know, there was a lot of different things that was underneath all of that stuff. Not making an excuse. I'm just saying that sometimes there's always things that lead up to stuff. So from that perspective, that was a different conversation. Or what about when you have abusive coaches like Bob Knight that still got a job at Texas Tech? And Indiana University did everything that they could to give this man another chance after being on tape of choking a kid or being on tape using a belt or whatever it was. It was a bunch of crazy stuff, right? And when he finally ran out his course with another incident and he got fired, and then the interim coach, Mike Davis, takes over and they go to a national championship game, barely losing to, I believe, Duke at the time at the championship game, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the opponent, but they made the Final Four championship game. Now Mike Davis, he's not even in D1 anymore, at least not at the highest level. What am I saying? Why am I bringing all these examples? I'm saying that you have abusive coaches, you have players that abuse their power and disrespect coaches. Come on, Allen Iverson's rant. Come on, practice. And not that Allen was even disrespectful, not in public. But I think that Allen's evolution, you know, saying that Larry Brown was the very best coach he ever had, where Larry Brown was able to crack a code that few coaches that was ever able to crack because he stayed consistent with Allen. And once he began to see, you know, the results. And then the coach understood, let me put the ball in his hands because this is our best option to win. It was a basketball decision, not just to appease bad behavior. Then they got to that 2001 finals. It eventually, of course, ran its course because of who Allen Iverson is and was, or at least was, because he's not a ball player anymore. I'm sure if come on, AI, you can come on the show and count. You can clarify. I'm sure that if Allen had the opportunity to clarify some of his actions as a younger guy, just cracking the code in the NFL, he'd say something different. Or say a Mike Vick, who told you, man, I didn't study my playbook, and he had a guy that made John Elway a Hall of Famer. Can you imagine if Michael Vick really gets into that playbook and listens to Dan Reeves, what kind of quarterback he may have become? So why is all those things? What does that have to do with bumping a coach? Everything. Because coach and player relationships, in particular on the NFL sideline or any sideline, those things are always tensions. Now, are there scenarios where coaches go too far? Absolutely. Are there scenarios where a player could go too far? Absolutely. This is not one of them. And I think that sometimes, because we've seen, you know, suspensions be just excessive, like with Draymond Green. I know that Draymond had been warned, but the amount of time that he missed, you know, because had you sent that warning shot before he went that far off, this probably doesn't happen, possibly, right? So it's those kind of things that you have to consider. And I don't think the league, because let's be honest, while Travis is a passionate player, have we ever seen Kelce do this during the game? No. I'm sure they've had words before. I'm sure they've had words behind closed doors. That's probably why, if you watch the tape and you look at it, Andy didn't even look up. Didn't even look his way. You know why? Because Andy's temperament, his leadership style, is totally different. Let's talk about leadership style for a second. I mentioned the great Bob Knight. I mentioned, or didn't mention him yet, but let's bring in a Phil Jackson. Let's bring in a Bill Belichick. Let's bring in any Hall of Fame coach that you can think of. All of them had different methods. Think about a Big John Thompson in college basketball back in the 80s and early 90s. The success that he had. Look at a tale of two coaches in Bob Knight and John Thompson. Two different guys. Both of them disciplinarians. Both of them loved their players. Both of them's mission was to graduate their players. I think Knight may have done better than that. at Indiana than at Georgetown. But understand that when you look at the two players, or at least the two coaches and the players that they coached, we didn't hear anything about John Thompson saying those things. We never heard any of those things happen when it regards to putting his hand on a player, when it came down to any misconduct, nor did we ever hear of anything about players getting out of line with Coach Thompson or Coach Knight, for the most part. But I think now in this social media age, a little push of passion and a shouting match for 200 million people to see, and a segment of the population that thinks that, you know what, these group of players get disciplined or more likely to get disciplined, which may have a lot of kernels of truth to it. I cannot deny that. And I'm not even mad at that. But I can separate that from something from this perspective to where it was a bump in passion. It didn't continue with hand pointing or push or where he had to be restrained. It didn't go that far. Can we just be fair? I'm not saying AJ Brown has ever had that incident. Maybe he has. I hadn't seen it. But there are certain aspects of what he's probably experienced in his playing career that may have made him feel that way. And who am I to tell him he's wrong for his feelings? But I could be fair enough to say, well, AJ Brown, you're right. That if it was you, possibly it goes a little bit further than probably what it needs to be. Or at least it's taken or perceived a certain way. Possibly. I can't deny that. I don't know what situations he's been in to make him feel that way. But like I said, as we go back to the scripture, Kelce, the player, and Andy Reid, the coach, had an opportunity to hash out their differences before it ever made any publication. And many people believe in their heart of hearts that this is one of those cases of a coach looking the other way, the media looking the other way, the league looking the other way. And it is really not. Can I tell you where some of this really comes from, A to Z? If I could be quite frank, and not even from a standpoint of race, I don't even think it's about that. I think that's got a little kernel to it. I'm not sure how much. If I had to play percentages, maybe 25 to 30%, and that may be too low because I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt based on their own personal experiences. And this is not empirical evidence. You know, my training demands that I at least keep that in focus. But honestly, I think this has a lot to do with the fact that Travis Kelce dates a superstar. And I can do a whole nother episode about that, and I probably will. But can we be honest? I've seen more commentary about why they got to show Taylor Swift. Let's be honest. This whole thing, because you know Travis's girlfriend used to be black, right? Can we just tear the Band-Aid off of this? I don't know if this is true. I saw something about some, and it may be because you don't know whatever is true. So this is alleged. I don't know. Just want to make sure because you know I don't want to get sued. You know, I feel like Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here because I don't want to get fined. So disclaimer: I'm not saying I know this, but I saw something that said something about his ex-girlfriend trying to sue him for $1 million for something frivolous, and she got some receipts. I don't know if that's true. I just saw that out there. It may not be true. You know, there's so much clickbait out there. I'm not saying that's what it is. But I do find it funny that the conversation among certain people that look like me have had this conversation a lot as though this guy dumped her and just went with Taylor Swift. Like, oh, sisters ain't good enough. Now, usually that is reserved for black men. Can we just tell the truth and shame the devil and expose him at the same time? Usually that's something. Hey, like with Shannon Sharp. Ask Shannon Sharp this right now. Come on, Unc. You can come on the show too. I know you got some issues, but you know we're praying for you. You come on the show. But what's so funny is that this rumor came out that Shannon Sharp only dates white women. And there are certain people in our community, we don't talk about it enough, right? Because we deal with what we deal with, and I get it. And this is not to be try to be conservative. Look, trust me. If you talk to me for real, look, Anybody can get this work. I'm a pragmatist. If something's wrong or something's right, that's what I'm on. So you can try to paint me in that light if you want to. Good luck. And even if you think you're right, it's not going to bother me because I know who I am and I know whose I am. So with that being said, the irony here is like, yeah, Travis, you're being treated like a brother right now, bro. I'm just going to tell you. And they showed Taylor Swift maybe 4 or 5 times. And watch this. If Travis Kelce and Taylor wasn't dating, first of all, she can afford to sit in the box seat. Okay? Because no different than Ashley Judd, right? When she was a big Kentucky fan, and when Kentucky was in their heyday, and it kind of became a part of the program, Ashley Judd. She was a big star in the movies. Of course, she came from a famous musical family, and they always show Ashley Judd. Okay, whatever. No big deal. At least not to me. It's not a big deal for them to show Taylor Swift to me. But I know if I'm honest and if I'm fair-minded, I'm like, that's what it is. There's a segment of the population that's mad that Travis Kelce dumped his gorgeous black girlfriend for this pasty white country star. That's bro treatment. He got a fade already, right? He got that edge up that's pretty tight. And Travis is just one of those dudes that's cool. I mean, regardless if he was a black dude, white dude, how he wears hair, who he date, Travis Kelce, you can tell Travis Kelce, the Kelce brothers, they just cool cats. They're a little passionate, yeah. I mean, well, that's you, Dr. Patton, giving them a pass. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you what I see. I only call them like I see. If I was an umpire here, I'll probably down this strike zone, I would be pretty accurate. Because a lot of this has nothing to do with him bumping her. And I'm not saying this is A.J. Brown's problem. A.J. Brown's problem is based on things that he has seen in the league, stuff I probably hadn't seen before, stuff he's probably experienced. And I'm not trying to take any man's experience and make it mine because I hadn't walked a mile in his shoes. I hadn't even walked on an NFL field, let alone played in a game. I ain't even played in a high school game or a flag football game. I would not disrespect the player's perspective from their experience. That's what I don't do. But here's what I'm not going to do. For those of us that ain't played a down of football, I'm not going to let you get away with bias like that. And for lack of a better term, just utter stupidity. Because again, Andy had no problem. To push or not to push is the question. Yes, it was a push. Did it escalate past that? No, it didn't. And I think that for us as a people, as a country, because there may be certain people that may have thought that's not black, that maybe thought that that was an issue. Maybe they did. I don't know. But when I saw it, and trust me, there's been a lot of times I've seen things on television and I call it for what it is. Man, that was racist. Or man, I don't know about that one. That's a little suspect. And maybe I missed it too. Look, one of the challenging things about being an African-American black person in this country, however you want to describe it. And it's sad we have to do that, but we didn't create that. So we just got to go with what it is. It's sad in this country that sometimes we can't express our feelings. And even when we express our feelings, that we can't have a conversation, say, you know what? Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe it's not what I think I see. Maybe it's just me being in my feelings because I've seen players go down for less. But what I'm telling you is, again, there's been players that are problem children in locker rooms that look like you and me. And coaches of all hues take a lot of their crap. Trust me. A lot of these guys that want to practice, a lot of these guys do dumb stuff on and off the field or off the court or whatever it is, and teams got to clean it up. They've been doing it. They even take risk on guys that probably they shouldn't draft. And this is just universal, whether they're African-American or not. You know, I think I saw this blurb not long ago about the amount of sexual assaults in a league. And somebody said, which league you think this is? And people overwhelmingly said it was the NBA, and it wasn't. It was the NFL. And all of them were not African-American males that were the people that perpetuated, you know, such a reprehensible act. assault against women. So a lot of times what we perceive is just blatantly what we perceive, and it's totally wrong. And in our society, you know what we need to do? Some of us, as my grandmama used to say, need to get us some business. It was a passionate football game. They trying to go back to back. And Kelce got a little bit too passionate. When you saw him in the press conference, you know, I get it. I can see how Jim Nance can kind of egg that on for him to beat Travis Kelce. But guess what that does? That's ratings. No different than when Charles Barkley played and he either, sorry for the word, pissed a lot of people off, or a lot of people liked him because he spoke his mind. I think that's Kelce. I'm not saying Kelce is as, willing to put himself out there politically in certain respects, but I think there's certain aspects of Kelce's life. You can tell he comes from a great family, the way he carries himself, he and his brother, how they move around the league. Nobody's perfect. But what I do know is that in his passion and in this bump, I guarantee you there was some kind of apology behind closed doors. And it didn't have to be for us to see. And I know we've gotten so spoiled with seeing everything behind the scenes in sports. Why? Social media makes it possible. I can remember a time when your favorite sports star had a girlfriend in three different parts of the world, or girlfriend in every city. You didn't know it. The beat writers did, but you didn't know it. Now, social media, we know what time these guys wake up. We know what they have for breakfast. We know if they took a shower or not. And sometimes too much access makes us have these crazy takes that has nothing to do with anything. The Bible says this: out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, truth shall be established. I think that sometimes, there's certain times you need to really kind of do a little research. Look at it from different angles, different perspectives, and different situations, because it'll help you to walk back some of this stuff. And then sometimes it'll make you say, yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I saw. I see why I feel the way that I feel. Or if I really do my research, oh, yeah, this man has got a history of doing this. This guy's not Bill Romanowski. This guy's not T.O. This guy is not any other troublemaker that you can pull out. He's not Charles Haley. Look him up. 5 Super Bowls. A guy that wouldn't take his meds sometimes and would do some deplorable things in the locker room. Oh, I won't tell you those things. This is a spiritual show. I won't tell you what he did, but if you know what I'm talking about, some of you hardcore Cowboys and San Francisco 49er fans, you might know exactly what I'm talking about. The A to Z, if you want to know, I'll tell you after the show. But he was wild. But the coaches had to put up with this guy. So coaches put up with way more than bumping. They put up way more with guys not coming to practice, or guys dogging it in the game, or guys getting hurt, guys not listening to instructions. Coaches like Andy Reid, they put up with a lot. And trust me, they don't take it lying down. They do not. A guy like Andy Reid, again, go back to the tape and just watch it. He didn't flinch. If Andy Reid thought he was in trouble, he would have addressed it right there. Because the one thing, and I heard Shady McCoy say this today, and he was right. Andy Reid is nobody's pushover. He's not some Johnny Cunt lately that just got in the league. He's not a rookie coach. This guy has 3 Super Bowl wins out of 5 appearances. He's been in 11 or 12 AFC or NFC championship games. He coached under the great Bill Walsh. He's under that coaching tree. This guy is responsible for making teams better. He is responsible for making quarterbacks better. Nobody thought that Michael Vick could play that way until Andy got his hands on him. Of course, Vick was ready to listen by that time. Nobody thought that Donovan McNabb was the right pick at the number 2 pick in 1999. They wanted Ricky Williams. They booed him. What did Andy Reid do with this guy? Made him a Pro Bowl. Or make that Pro Bowler. Helped him to 5 NFC championship games. So this guy has a resume. And if this guy's not mad, or if Bill Belichick wasn't mad with Tom and just spoke about it vaguely, even though we know now that these guys always had their problems in private. They had their schisms about how they saw game planning. Or when Tom Brady wanted to keep Antonio Brown on the team and Bill Belichick didn't want to deal with his attitude, because that's why they got rid of him. So when you understand these kind of things and you look at the landscape from an expanded view, this don't look as bad as it looked. It don't look as bad as it seems. Did it look bad sight unseen? Absolutely. I raised my eyebrows and said, yo. But it was Andy's response that caused me not to take it any further than what it was. And that's the push or not to push question. Is why do I question Andy Reid's coaching acumen? Why do I question Travis Kelce's professionalism and passion for the game when it's working? Because I said this early to you, A to Z. When Michael Jordan was punching out players, now this is from a player's perspective, but still leadership nonetheless. When as an owner, he's got his friend Charles Oakley coming in and trying to rough up and toughen up Kwame Brown before 2 hours before the game, and then wonder why he's tired when it's time to actually play the game. Yeah, that's the kind of leadership some of y'all worship. But you got a problem with a player and coach that have no beef with each other. They had a bump. They probably discussed it offline, and it's over with. And A.J. Brown is in his feelings. And maybe A.J. Brown is in his feelings because he lost to that team last year, 38-35. Maybe he's in his feelings because of that. Maybe he's in his feelings because he thought that it should have been them in a rematch against these guys. Maybe he thought that. I don't know. I don't want to try to speculate. I think that A.J. Brown's a great guy. He's a great receiver. He earned his money. The Tennessee Titans GM got fired because over $3 or $4 million, A.J. Brown still wanted to be in Nashville. That's where he wanted to be. So I get it. But as I wrap this up, I want you to understand it from this perspective. We in this country as African Americans, we got a lot of stuff to deal with. We just do. And I know that there's some PTSD with some stuff that sometimes look like what it is, and it can be disguised so that if we're going to climb the ladder of success, if we're not going to, pass out or go crazy every time something looks a little bit flimsy and we just got to keep going, that is the legacy of who we are as a people in this country. It is. And I'm not saying that we're supposed to take abuse lying down. I'm not saying that either. But what I am saying is that if there was a race card to be played, come on, most of us, if you went to a HBCU, you've been to a black barbecue, you've been to the church picnic, you know you don't play the big joker after the second hand if you got the big joker. You sit on that. And I'm not saying there's a such thing as a race card, because it's not. I hate that term. But the pejorative brings my brain to this to say it this way. Now, A to Z, if you don't mind.
Look, did they make a big deal when LeBron ran into Spoelstra? No, a lot of people forgot about that.
Well, but people said it. They talked about it,
but not to this degree.
Not to this degree. And but here's the reason why. Because
nothing happened to LeBron.
Yeah, but check this out. That's what makes AJ's point somewhat right. Because the way it was discussed, and Spoelstra is not a white guy. He's a Filipino American, right? But it's that perception of black men, black people, even when we talk about what's going on with police and compliance and those kind of things, that kind of discussion gets thrown out there. And to AJ Brown's point, which I don't think this, like I said, you got to wait to play the big joker at some point in time, right? You got to play it at the right time. As a musician growing up as a kid, playing drums in church, there were certain feels that shouldn't fit on a slow song that fit on the John P. Key song. Why am I soloing, on I Shall Wear a Crown or Silver and Gold? It doesn't match. It doesn't fit. We were taught to play what the song requires, in particular as a drummer. And if you grew up playing drums in the black church, for my white viewers, if you're clicking on this, you try to figure that out. Look, black church and white church, we all love the same God, but it's just a different type of culture, what we do. We all over the place, right? I mean, until somebody teaches us and reins us in. I get it, especially if we learn a couple notes. But I digress. I'm just saying that perception, that's where A.J. Brown can have a semblance of a point, because depending on who it is, the bigger the star, say it's Patrick Mahomes, that bumps into Andy Reid that way and screams at him. Now, that's not Patrick's approach. Maybe he does it off the field. Maybe he does it in practice. Maybe he does it in a place where, there's less, people. But I'm not going to tell you, and if we're talking about coach and quarterback relationship, I guarantee you he and Andy Reid have had their run-ins, and maybe not from a physical standpoint, but definitely verbal. And football is definitely a part of the game. That's something that I know that A.J. Brown knows. But here's what I was going with that. When you understand perception and our handling of authority versus, and this is what AJ and even some people that feel the way that they do, and they have a right to feel that way, because that is a real space where our passions are not always appreciated or understood or even given the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying all the time it goes that way. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's so many times I've saw some commentaries or commentators defend, a late hit or say something to the effect of understanding just the player's plight, regardless of what he looks like. And then there's others you can always kind of feel, or at least you may perceive, and you could be dead wrong. What I'm saying is that when we have our perceptions and we don't have that one-to-one contact, then this push or this passionate moment that went the wrong way or could have been handled better is being perceived the wrong way for a lot of reasons. And a lot of reasons that I think that it is sad for us as a country, as a society. And I got how we got there because, hey, look, the way that most African Americans feel in this country, we didn't create that. So I get that too. But at the same time, I can be honest. I can be fair-minded. I can really be not disingenuous, but I can definitely be very, very honest about what it really looked like and what led so many people to have such conversation where they're talking about it on The View. Really? And I know The View is a more of a quote-unquote leaning type of show. I guarantee you some conservative radio show, sports or otherwise, probably ain't even touched it. I don't know. I didn't do that much research. But I can tell you, it is really much to do about nothing. And trust me, anybody that really knows me personally know I don't mind telling you something's racist or I can see bias in a scenario. They will tell you that to the core. But on this one right here, I can't do it. There's too many examples that I gave with coaches and players. Coaches behaving badly, players behaving badly. This is not one of them. This is not Bob Knight and Neil Reed. Nowhere close. This isn't Latrell Sprewell choking his coach. This ain't Giannis telling the fired now Adrian Griffin he's not going. He's going back in the game. These are minor things in comparison to some of the stuff that I named. And I think that we can't bear false witness, as Scripture says, in this regard. We can't look at this and take this so far that we can't see the humanity in it. We can't see the forgiveness in it. In particular, if there was some type of reconciliation between Big Red and Travis Kelce. And the one thing that you got to know about Andy Reid, who's 65 years old, who's been in this league 30 plus years, who's coached at the highest levels, who worked his way up through the ranks, who have coached even through adversity with his son committing suicide and starting a foundation and being a part of a foundation that helps to kind of deal with those things. This guy is a very, very, very tough guy. He's a focused guy. He's a no-nonsense guy. The way he goes about it, you may not understand it, you may not agree with it. But one of the things that you got to do when you do your research and you form an opinion about this man, or even about Travis Kelce, is that you got to understand that these two men are very passionate people. And there's a reason why they've had the success that they've had together. And sometimes success is what really changes narratives. Because as I stated earlier, with the dynasty of the Chicago Bulls, we don't like to delve into the fact of the disrespect that Michael Jordan had for Jerry Krause. And check that episode out. That's about to drop too. You're going to see me break some of that down even the more. Because when you understand this perception of leadership and subordinates and those kind of people, we get messed up. And here's what the Bible says, and we're going to offer our appeal, but the Bible tells us to obey those that have the rule over us. A lot of people don't like that. With your hypocritical self, you're mad about a bump in between a coach and a player, but you lie on your timesheet every week. Come on, you call in sick and you're not even sick. Oh, your kid has got to go to the doctor, but you really was late because you was getting Starbucks. Who are we kidding here? When we talk about the respect for authority, when we talk about what's right, and I get it, I'm not making a false equivalency on what actually happened and what A.J. Brown said. What I'm trying to get you to do is expand your lens. You know, as Jesus said, you know, get that beam out your eye, you know, or get the speck out your eye while you're trying to get the beam out your brother's eye. And if we as a country, as we as a sports community sometimes really took a step back, whatever the situation is, and judged our opinions and our passions about what we thought we saw versus what actually is, then just maybe a push or not to push would not be that much in question. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're so ecstatic that you are with us tonight. Make sure that you like, you share, you subscribe. Tell somebody about this podcast. And also, I want to tell you about somebody that really empowered me to do this podcast. His name is Jesus Christ, who is my Lord and Savior, whom I serve to the very best of my ability. I don't get it right every day. I would be lying to you if I said I did. The Bible says in John that he that says he has no sin is a liar. And the last thing I want to do is tell you a lie. I want to tell you the truth because Jesus said it this way, that he's the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to him but by him. Nobody comes to the Father but by him. So I want to invite you that if you're lost and you don't know who Christ is, or if you're trying to figure some stuff out, you know, let us help you find that journey. You know, reach out to us on email. You know, we take prayer requests. You know, we like to interact with people that want to know more about faith and spiritual things, and not just spiritual things from a space of a lot of different freaky things that people see spiritual things. They call it spiritual. Everything ain't holy when it comes to spiritual things. So I can't help you in that regard. But if you're talking about Jesus, you're talking about God, the true and living God, you know, hey, I'm willing to offer what I can. And I'm just thankful and happy that we've gotten the opportunity to really take sports and spiritual things and appeal to you to know that this Savior that we call Jesus Christ is available, and he can save, as the old folks used to say in my church growing up in my tradition, he can save from the uttermost and the guttermost. And my pastor growing up as a kid used to say, hey, you know that juice in the bottom of the garbage can? That's where God brought me from. That's pretty nasty to even the visual. I'm about to eat dinner. I don't even want to think about that. But it's a great understanding from a standpoint of how far God will go to save you and I if we allow him to. So we thank God for the time. Please like, share, subscribe. We'll be back another time right here for another episode of Sports and Spiritual Things with Dr. Patton. See you guys soon. God bless. Peace.